Tracing the strands of a long lifespan can be a daunting task, and it can be more challenging if it's interwoven into the journey of a national life, that is the post-independence life of a young republic. Our guest, Mr. Gopalkrishna Gandhi's new book, The Undying Light, precisely attempts to do so. How could you detach from the figures in the book with a fair degree of objectivity to produce this kind of retelling of the times?
The faintest of ink is stronger than the strongest of memory, and that helped me to put things together.
What do you think is the pull of Dr. Ambedkar's legacy in today's time?
His light was self-lit. He did not borrow his light from other sources of energy. He was self-made. He was his own sculptor. He was his own book. He was his own speech. He was his own man. Shobharam. He's a Dalit. He said recently that the leaders of New India knew that they cannot write the constitution. Only Baba Saheb can.
What was the pull of Jayaprakash Narayan for you?
Very hard to say what is the pull of truth. सच क्या है कहना बहुत मुश्किल है, पर झूठ क्या है ये फौरन पता चल जाता है. जयप्रकाश नारायण was about truth. His life was the life of ईमान. ईमान की परिभाषा बहुत मुश्किल है, बेईमान की परिभाषा बहुत आसान है. जयप्रकाश stands for ईमान.
2014, just a few days after Mr. Modi was voted to power, you said that we have to accept you, we have to respect people's mandate, and gave him some kind of advice on what he needs to follow. Now 11 years after that, what would you like to tell Mr. Modi now?
Jawaharlal Nehru was described by Hiren Mukherjee, the great communist leader, as the leader of the house. He said, Jawaharlalji, you are the leader of the house and you are the leader of the opposition. So that is something which I would like to tell our Prime Minister, to be the leader of the opposition himself as much as he is leader of the house.
It was Mr. Gandhi who actually stopped the bullets.
Gandhi was not stopped by the 3 bullets. He stopped them. Ramchandra Gandhi meant to say that he stood on the pathways of hate, fear and violence. From that death, and especially by invoking the name of Rama, who was his talisman against fear, he said, I change, but I do not die. I change, but I do not die, is a phrase of the poet Shelley. These change, but they do not die. And that is something behind the title of this book, The Undying Light.
Tracing the strands of a long lifespan and that too with a chronicle's gaze, can be a daunting task, and it can be more challenging if it's interwoven into the journey of a national life, that is the post-independence life of a young republic. Our guest, Mr. Gopalkrishna Gandhi's new book, The Undying Light, precisely attempts to do so, and he does so by recounting his life and the nation's journey, the points of their intersections, as well as points where they run parallel to each other in their own trajectories. Mr. Gandhi is uniquely placed to do so, as he has been a witness to the key figures that shaped our modern nationhood. Also, he has found himself at key positions to see the unfolding of the national life in corridors of power, as a former bureaucrat and a former governor. And in the process, he has not lost sight of what I think is his primary impulse, that is literary, and he has authored a number of books which has a quite wide range from fiction to non-fiction translations. But this must be the most challenging project he has undertaken. Would you agree, sir?
You are right on every count that you have just narrated and thought aloud about. I should start by saying that I had no particular credentials to interweave my rather routine and predictable life with the events of independent India. No particular credentials. The only justification I can see for being asked to write this is that there were some archival materials around me which required to be shared, and I was in a position to do so. Also to recount conversations with people I worked with. So mine was an almost accidental role.
With this kind of book, and at the age that you are now, with a historical distance, the cold reasoning of historical distance, and maybe the total detachment with characters cannot be expected, but how could you detach from the figures in the book with a fair degree of objectivity to produce this kind of retelling of the times?
It has been said that the faintest of ink is stronger than the strongest of memory. To come to objectivity, I was aware of the opposite in me, which is subjectivity. I was aware that I had very strong preferences, I had very strong leanings, I had very strong what may be called biases.
Now coming to your another grandfather, the paternal one, with whom you didn't have the fortune to live with in your adult life. So you sum up his going away from the national life in your brother's words, means the philosophy that it represented, that it was Mr. Gandhi who actually stopped the bullets.
Gandhi was not stopped by the 3 bullets. He stopped them, by which Ramchandra Gandhi meant to say that he stood on the pathways of hate, fear and violence.
One which you have dealt with fair detail is the Operation Polo, and you say that Mr. Patel stood out because secularism was not all tall talk. He showed that you have to act without bias, and so how did it bolster his credentials as a fair administrator?
Sardar Patel,
yes,
was a fair man. Not just because he had done his law and had become a barrister and knew that justice requires to be fair. Not just because of that. But there's something very intrinsically honest and fair about him. But the most important thing about him was there was nothing petty or vindictive about him.
What do you think is the pull of Dr. Ambedkar's legacy in today's time?
If I feel he had not only been continued as law minister, but had become the first vice president of India, which he could have in 1952. A great healing would have happened in India. It is our loss. It is not his loss. उन्होंने कुछ नहीं खोया, हमने खोया.
You value most Jayaprakash Narayan, and you mention about your visit to his home in Bihar. And what was the pull of Jayaprakash Narayan for you?
What is the pull of truth? Very hard to say what is the pull of truth. सच क्या है कहना बहुत मुश्किल है, पर झूठ क्या है ये फौरन पता चल जाता है. One knows a lie when it is told. It can be hidden for some time. Jayaprakash Narayan was about truth. He was a leftist, he was a socialist, which means he was on the same page as Marxists. But when Russia invaded Hungary, He said, Russia is wrong. When China did what it did in Tibet, JP was with Tibet.
During your career and say mostly post-career, you see very apologetically at your own ambitions, and you say that that is your weakness. And when Sonia Gandhi says that you were keen on governorship, and you write that it was correct, and you go into deep introspection that yes, I was keen on it, maybe not in a mouth-watering way, but in a different way. I think it didn't bother you, but you came to accept that it as a part of your personality.
It is a part of my personality, and my personality is part of the book. But I am a very unimportant part of the book, though I'm a part of it. I don't want to put too much emphasis on myself as a person, but as a narrator, I just want to be honest about myself. Because I find it appalling when a writer speaks with a high opinion of himself or herself, high opinion of himself or herself.
Now there is a lot of talk about governors going out of their constitutional limits, particularly from Tamil Nadu, the state from where you come from.
So the president, the governor, should know that she or he has prabhava and should not seek adhikar. Adhikar has borders. Prabhav is borderless.
So in your interactions with President Narayanan, many years ago I was in the audience when you narrated an episode that Narayanan in turn narrated to you when he met Mahatma Gandhi, and it was his Maun Vrat then, and that is missing in the book.
I may or may not be the writer that I should be. I may be a good writer, indifferent, but you are a very good reader of the book. I find you read the book very, very closely. I wish I had read books as closely as you have read this book.
So you declined to 2022 presidential nomination from the opposition, making a distinction between opposition unity and national consensus. How do you distinguish between the two?
In a democracy, an opposition is very crucial. This is something I learned from both JP and Rajaji. And so opposition to Nehru was important. Opposition to Indira was important. Opposition is important in a democracy. And when the opposition as a unified organization wants to challenge the incumbent office of the day.
Say in 2014, just a few days after Mr. Modi was voted to power, you wrote an open letter to him published in the Hindu, and you said that we have to accept you, we have to respect people's mandate, and gave him some kind of advice on what he needs to follow. Now 11 years after that, what would you like to tell Mr. Modi now?
He must not forget that he is the Prime Minister of the whole of India, including those who are not his own supporters, who are not members of his own party. And that also includes very particularly, the opposition.